Wetlands are an important landscape capable of supporting a vast array of species, and they're pretty amazing places too. They can help prevent flooding, they purify our water, they store carbon, and they're hugely beneficial to our health and well-being as well. I'm Kitty, and I've come to Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust site in Slimbridge between Bristol and Gloucester on the Severn Estuary. And this place was formed back in the 1940s by a man called Sir Peter Scott, who wanted to bring people closer to nature, and in a move that was quite radical at the time, decided to open up the reserve to the public. And he called this place an avian Serengeti, and it's not hard to see why. It's an amazing example of a unique ecosystem that is flourishing with life and biodiversity, but I'm here today to hopefully find out a little bit more about one particular species, the common crane.
This is our duckery sort of work areas, and it's where we incubate the eggs and rear the ducklings. That's our head of aviculture. Give him a wave. Nothing, that's the trouble. And then out on the right here are various sort of off-site breeding pens. So a lot of the conservation breeding works. Over the back there are the higher profile ones, things like the spoon-billed sandpipers. Have you heard about those? So so 10 centres scattered around the UK, and some are just reserved. Some are reserves, like Steert, but most of them are a combination of the sort of captive area and a wild reserve that surrounds that.
Are they kind of intersecting with the wild birds as well, or is that like quite a separate area, the ones that are captive?
So in the ideal world, you would keep them very separate.
Yeah. But
one of the things that, in some ways, is wonderful about Slimbridge is you have got that mixture of stuff, and some of the habitat that we've created for the captive birds is so nice that the wild birds want to be there as well. And it's actually a little bit of a problem because people come, is that a wild one or is it a collection one? But in some ways, it's quite nice as well, but it's all mixed in. I haven't actually been out here for a little while, so I'm quite keen to come and have a look to see what the area looks like.
I'm lucky to be joined by Dave Painter. Now, Dave, you're the reserve manager here at Slimbridge. That's
I am
fantastic.
Indeed, yes.
What a place to work.
A brilliant job. Yeah.
And I know it's an incredibly busy moment at the moment because we're just opening up to the public again, and there's lots going on because it's the springtime rush. What kind of thing is happening on the site at the moment?
Well, all those things. Yeah, we are newly opened up to the public for some of the areas. The hides are now open, so lots of work around that, getting ready for that. Mega changes every few months over the last few years, so it's great to have all the people back on site again. But at the same time, it's a busy breeding season as well, and there's just a hell of a lot going on at the moment. It's brilliant.
Have you got avocets?
Lots of avocets. I mean, avocets are a fairly new species for us. They came in about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's just gone crazy. So we're looking at something like 30 to 40 pairs at the moment, and from some of the hides here, South Lake Hide particularly, stacks of youngsters just wandering around. It really is a big crowd.
Like
pleaser.
Charismatic.
They're fantastic birds. They're so showy, and they're quite tame as well. They're wild birds, but they're accepting of people being there. And they're right there, right in your face. Happy
to be the centre of attention.
Yeah.
We've heard just a red shank in the backdrop just now, and we've had skylarks around us and tufted ducks. So it seems like it's all go, but it is quite a drizzly day. And so does that affect things coming out?
It does a little bit. Some of the birds aren't singing quite as much as they are, and obviously with newly hatched young birds, they've got to be quite careful in this weather. So we'll see lots of brooding. Those mum avocets at the moment will be crouched down, covering the youngsters from the rain. So I hope it eases up soon for their sake, so they can get out and they can feed. Yeah.
So I come from down in Somerset, and I know the Levels and Moors quite well, and I remember it must have been about 10 years ago when there was a huge amount of excitement because a bunch of common cranes were released down on the Levels, and they're a bird with quite an interesting story, really, aren't they?
The crane story is a brilliant one. In a nutshell, cranes became extinct in Britain, loss of habitat over hunting 400 years ago. A small population has set up on the east coast of Britain. That's now expanding very well, which is great. But the decision was made to try and speed up that process, and especially get birds into the west. So eggs were taken from Germany, reared here at Slimbridge, just a few hundred yards away, and released onto your fantastic wetlands on the Somerset levels. And they've done very well. They've spread out across those areas, and they're now starting to breed quite successfully there in the Somerset levels. And we're even seeing a few birds coming back here to Slimbridge. We've got 5 or 6 pairs that are now think of this as home and are trying to breed here, and they're struggling a bit more here. So we've done a lot more work to try and change the habitat for them. We didn't think it would be suitable for them, but the cranes liked it, and we've done developments like this where we're trying to improve conditions for them to actually breed successfully here.
So what are we standing in front of here? There's a channel of water and these lovely reeds surrounding it, and there's some little islands. Are they the things you've kind of created, or is this whole area new?
Yeah, one of the things we've realised is that for the cranes to breed successfully, they can feed. They're finding food in all of the fields and the permanent pastures and even the improved pastures.
What kind of thing are they going for?
Leather jackets is the staple diet, it seems. It was news to me just how many leather jackets there are in a square metre of soil, especially of old permanent pastures. Have a lot. So there's plenty of food here. They were trying to nest, and we were mainly losing chicks at a sort of young to sort of half-sized chicks, and that was predation from foxes, which occur around here. And so we had to make it so it's easier for those birds to escape from foxes. So we've managed to create a network of water channels which they can escape across, opened up the landscape so the birds can move through the fences and the hedges, and most importantly create little island areas. This is a brand new one just behind us here, and in a few years when this is all growing up, we're hoping that the cranes will be able to come into this area and breed, and we'll have another territory on site. And I was very excited earlier in the year because we had a pair of cranes actually nested on an island that I built. So I'm very pleased about that one. So it is working, and we've got 3 pairs here involved in breeding at the moment. 2 of them have got 2 young and are doing very well, and a 3rd pair we were hoping, fingers crossed, might actually hatch today. Today is the date that they should be hatching. So I'm going to have to keep you informed on that one. They haven't appeared yet.
So we're waiting for the radio call. Is someone watching the nest at the moment? Yeah,
we've got volunteers that are there just showing the birds to the public, and they're under instructions to give me a shout if anything exciting happens.
Fingers crossed, we'll see. Yeah. If not, it's lovely to come out here and see all the other stuff. And isn't it amazing to think of a creature that was previously such an iconic part of this landscape to be reinstated and to be successful? It's
I mean, it's a word we use a lot, isn't it? Iconic, but it is for a crane. They're big, you know. They're this tall. They're very obvious in the landscape, and they're loud. We haven't yet, but we will hear calling at some point, and that just changes the whole atmosphere for me.
The soundscape is
a wonderful place to be.
Amazing. And when I've seen them down in Somerset, I've seen them in huge numbers, about 30 at a time, or going over and landing. Do they have kind of intricate social interactions as a group, or do they mostly spend time in pairs? And what about that kind of social side of it?
All of those. They do have big interactions as groups. They're gregarious in the winter time. They come together in flocks, and in the spring when they're dancing around, and lots of calling and display, and that's fantastic. They do have, as a rule, loyal pair bonds. Right. So even within those groups, you'll be able to pick out the pairs.
So year in, year out, they'll be the same pairs?
Yes, though we're learning a lot broadly. We're learning a lot about it, and it is a little bit like a soap opera on occasions. We've seen some pairs that have got together and have stayed together as a pair. If they've lost a mate, they will find another one. I think that's probably the norm. We've seen others that have been a bit more wayward. You know, they've swapped partners and gone off with someone else and then joined up with the same one again. So
Fascinating stuff.
we've been able to follow that in great detail. So we're learning a lot. You know, those birds when they were released were marked with coloured leg rings. So we really are learning a lot about those relationships. But yes, as a rule, they're pretty loyal partners.
Pretty loyal partners. So this is part of a project called the Great Crane Project, isn't it? Is that just a Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust scheme, or is that something bigger?
No, a real team effort. We've worked with the RSPB, the Pensthorpe Conservation Trust to get these birds back in the wild. And that's been a big thrill about the project, is that teamwork and the fact that it's working. Yeah.
So exciting to hear. And I know that there's been other reintroduction projects around the country that have been successful, like the white-tailed eagles and the red kites. So it's really amazing to think of something happening right here and so close to Bristol as well. But just over there, I believe, is actually the river, isn't it?
Yeah, the Severn Estuary. Shall we go and have a look?
I reckon let's go and have a look. Yeah, wonderful. Let's go. So we've come up onto the seawall, and behind me is this epic view of the River Severn, and there's all sorts of activity going on behind me in the reeds. We've just heard some sedge and reed warblers, and there's some herons over there as well, aren't there? So what have you just been looking at through your scope?
Well, I just spotted a pair of curlew there, which common bird here in the winter, large numbers wintering, and just recently even a few pairs breeding.
Fantastic, because we get this massive influx over the winter of curlews, and it's amazing to think of them actually rearing chicks here, and fingers crossed that will be successful.
Yeah, it's a new thing for us. They're nesting in between the tides. This is the sort of salt pasture here, this very high, dry, often dry kind of salt marsh, and it's a bit risky. It's a great place to nest as long as you don't get a big tide over it, and I think they've got away with it this year.
Fingers crossed they'll be okay. And this is a classic kind of estuary scene, really, and estuaries are incredible ecosystems and habitats for a lot of creatures. Why are they so important here and in this country?
Yeah, estuaries are so important. You know, it's one of the most important messages for us to get across to our visitors. You know, we have all sorts of people that come and visit the site here, that come to see the captive birds and the exhibits around the collection there. But our real aim is to get them out to come and have a look out over the estuary and just appreciate the wildlife that's here. Britain is actually by far the most important country in Europe for wintering waterfowl. We don't realise that. We think that wildlife spectacles happen somewhere else, but it's an incredibly important part of the world because we've got this. We've got the most fantastic set of estuaries compared to anywhere in the world, and especially valuable in a place like this on the Severn because we've got that massive tidal range. So that's generating these huge areas of food-rich intertidal mudflats, and that's really what's bringing our birds here. It's something to be, you know, a great part of our heritage. It's something to be enormously proud of.
Fantastic, yeah. They're absolutely special places, and for me, I think estuaries, mudflats, wetlands have a kind of magic to them. I think it's the fact that it seems to be where everything kind of merges, sea, land, sky, and also in places like this, people as well, because we're all kind of invited onto these reserves to share in it all. And I think there's something about the fact that there are birds here that come here over the winter and that live here through the year, that some of them have travelled for thousands of miles across the world. And for me, it makes the hugeness of the planet kind of make sense a little bit more. Yeah. What kind of magic does it hold for
migration, for me, that to be able to see migration, you know, we know now where these birds come from, and absolutely right, some of these are breeding up in the high Arctic. You know, our white-fronted geese and Buick swans, they're 4,000 miles that way at the moment. But just being able to see it, to witness it, these great ebbs and flows of movements that are going on, and I love being in a place like this and seeing those swallows, you know, just common birds, streaming past as they're arriving in the spring or they're leaving in the water. Yeah, the migration does it for
something
me.
Really immensely comforting about it, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's still going on.
Puts us in our place.
None of these little barriers that people like to impose, and
they don't care about borders.
They don't care about that. They just doing their stuff from one end of the world once to the other.
Oh, thanks so much, Dave, for giving us your time, and good luck with all the ongoing projects with the cranes. I hope the curlies make it, and the avocets and all that. So thanks so much.
It's been great to meet you. Cheers.